One. All right. Good morning, everybody. Or I guess it is now 12:05, so it is the afternoon here on the East Coast in Newport, Rhode Island on this winter solstice, December 21st, around the Sail and Roll. So a couple late nights for, I guess, us on the East Coast, watching America's Cup racing till well after. I love those long delays. That was fun. But yeah, put the kids to bed and watch some Cup race wasn't too bad. So I'm assuming everybody here did the same. And you, Jonathan and Pedro, you guys got the luxury of an early watch and early bedtime. But so just before we get into it, for those who are watching and didn't watch, let's sort of recap day three with this DNR provided from the America's Cup management and commentated by Matt Sheehan. Does a pretty good job of it. So just to bring us up to speed on the day three, which was before the no-win Christmas race, which was kind of funny, but let's sort of check back in here and give it a watch.
First race between Ineos Team UK and Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli had the makings of a classic match race. Luna Rossa was slightly quicker, but when Ineos came off her foils, it was the start of a painful pattern for the British, who only saw the margin go in one direction. The win for Luna Rossa by almost 2 legs.
This is the Ambulance, going to be penalty JBR, penalty complete.
The second race was between Ineos Team New Zealand and American Magic, a much closer affair. A needle match saw American Magic lead by just...
Let me see. All right, started it again. There you go. Incoming calls.
Seconds after the first lap. But a dip behind the Kiwis and a slow tack afterwards saw a lead change. Emirates Team New Zealand were now in control. Ineos Team UK were next up against American Magic, and despite a good start by both, the British had to clear a penalty from the start, dropping them off the foils. And as the breeze dropped, flight was getting hard for the British, handing the Americans an easy win. 2, 1, going down. But it was the final race of the day that was the big one, the match between New Zealand and Italy. If Emirates Team New Zealand won, they would take over a victory. If the Italians won, there would be a 3-way tie. Luna Rossa dominated the start and took an early lead. New Zealand gave more distance away when they came off their foils after a tight mark rounding at the top. Italy were well ahead until the breeze dropped for them and turned the race inside out. Recovering an 800-metre deficit, Emirates Team New Zealand took the lead. And while Luna Rossa got close, they couldn't take it back, and the home team took the win and the America's Cup World Series.
Really cool for us. Yeah, it's certainly, at both extremes of the wind conditions, it makes my job a bit harder. So, pretty difficult to keep it on the floors around the whole course. But through the manoeuvres, we got the other lads and help us out to get it through. And did an awesome job from everyone there, the whole team on board, just to keep it going. We touched back down, but both going really well in the takeoff conditions. So we managed to get going again and just keep in the race and then obviously pass them when they put off the balls.
All right, there you have it. So 5-4-3. Was that a surprise on anybody here on the sort of the final standings?
No.
No, I mean, I kind of feel that New Zealand was working not to win, letting everybody get way ahead of them on the start and seeing what they could do. But no, it wasn't a surprise. I'm surprised how bad the British are, but if anybody can sort them out, it'll be Grant Zimmer.
All right, so who wants to take that one on? How much of a hurdle, Ed Baird, is this for Ineos Team UK over the next 2 weeks? Because there's been a couple places where they were look quick, going a straight line, but as you know, like we said, the course is shallow and you still got to be able to turn. So what do you think are kind of the quick resolutions?
Well, I mean, not knowing much about the actual boats to sail them, it feels like, there's a lot of focus on the foil. And of course, having the right size and shape foil is very important, especially when it's marginal conditions. But I get the feeling that they also are lacking some control, some power controls, especially in the mainsail. It feels like these boats have some some things that we don't see from just watching the video, but there's some things that are happening up in the sail, up especially towards the top, that are very important pieces of equipment to keep the power on when it's necessary. And I think what we're seeing is that New Zealand's done a nice job of finding that that equipment usage up there, and that maybe the Brits are a little behind in that area. But it's tough. In one way to look at it, it's tough right now because they're feeling pretty low, and the team morale is struggling because they just got punished. But at the same time, there's plenty of time if they have the tools available. And of course, the wingtips are already built, basically. There's not time to say, oh, we need something special and we're going to make a new one. There is time to adjust what you have, and I guess there's like a 20% rule or something where you can make some changes to the actual the wing and that sort of thing. But I'm interested to find out, as somebody who's watching from the outside. I'm really interested to understand better what's going on up inside the mainsails, because I think that is the thing that people aren't talking about, but I think that may be where there's more to learn.
Jonathan, some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's probably more in the rig that is still being figured out, and it's easy to focus on the foil and the liftoff and all that stuff, but the power's coming from the sail still. I actually think Ineos is in pretty big trouble. And I may not be right about this, but when you start off behind like they clearly are, don't assume that the other teams are not improving as well. And frankly, there's just not that much time. So, they're going to have to start doing real races here, like in a month, which in America's Cup World, that's a pretty short amount of time to go from behind to being ahead. So that's my 2 cents.
Was there in watching some of the racing, Jonathan, was there some things that surprised you in terms of the boat handling, or just even as you try to sort of look a little deeper into what you see in any of the boat packages?
Well, it's clear that all the teams are still figuring out the transitional periods, how to do the mark roundings effectively, how to get back up on the foils when you fall off. And some teams seem to be better at that than others, or maybe their equipment is more well suited to it. But I think there are some big technique issues that, promote success in those transitional periods.
And so it looked like, obviously they had a bit of the light end, they never really got to the top end of the range. Peter Eisler, our weather expert, once January rolls around, can we expect to see kind of the similar conditions, or we start to get a little higher up there?
No, once January comes, the northeast sea breeze is going to be more prevalent, which is not the stronger of the two sea breezes that come. But they're going to shift the time, so you have to stay up even later, Dave, later in the rounds, an hour later for the start, in the hopes that the southwest sea breeze will make its way through, because where the race course is, it's kind of often where the transition is. And basically, New Zealand, whether you're picking the fall or the summertime, fall's windier and summertime's a little bit lighter, but you're going to have an all-around package, because you could have a 15, 20 knot day, even in the middle of the summer. And as we know, as we've learned from Ed's article and the Sailing World edition, you you got to commit to your package way ahead of time. So you can't have different foils. You can't have your light air package or heavier package. That said, as has been discussed, the whole thing about technique, your lighter, your transitional technique versus your heavier technique, and stuff that is allowed to be changed is going to be really important. And that's what the teams are going to be going to school on in the next few weeks.
And for the issue, as maybe he's alluded to, that you wrote sort of an early look at some of the boat on boat situations. Did most of those play out as predicted? It seemed so, but then there was sort of this talk of the starting box being a little more confined, so maybe forced a little more interaction than they might have otherwise had, maybe on like more similar to day 3, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that really surprised me was that that people were both late and early, by a margin that was not small. And I was really surprised at how many penalties there ended up being. And part of that is the late and the early, but then even coming together with the boats, I really thought that they would stay just a little farther apart than they did. I was very surprised to see New Zealand go over and get on the left-hand side of things and try to start from there twice. They made it work one time, but then Spithill figured out that how to pinch them down and make it not work the next time. And that's just a sign of they're not match racing, they're just using their equipment. And so now I'm sure Burling and his guys will go back and say, all right, well, we tried that and it didn't work the way we had hoped. So
We'll see that again.
We'll stay away from that. But no, it was interesting because, basically they're trying to stay on their foils. They're trying to do one big loop if they can. Worst cases, they do a full circle, but it was interesting to see occasionally both foils were out to try and slow the boats down and eat up some time that way. So several of the things we talked about in the article were there. It was interesting that I guess I thought that the boats, if they started on opposite ends of the starting line, that by the time they got to the first boundary, that they would be, the windward boat, I would have thought would try to drive down forward and over the other guy a little more, and the leeward boat try to point a little higher. But there just was enough speed difference right there that you could see that they weren't using the first boundary as a defensive tool. But it is there, and if they have close starts, they may see that happening.
Hey Ed, in your research for the article, was there a fixed starting box size, or was that because during the broadcast, and they never drew it on the broadcast, so the viewers didn't know what the box size was. But in one post-race interview, I think it was the Kiwis referred to, they gave us a much bigger box today, so the whole starting thing was different. So.
Yeah, I have my notes right here, Pete, with a drawing of. Thanks for asking, but they said that it would be a 3/10 of a mile to a half of a mile, basically from the starboard end of the starting line over to the right-hand boundary. So they can shrink or expand that as they need for the breeze. And it's, obviously it just shows up on the navigation tools. But that was another one that came up that you would have, I'm sure, cringed at, was I think there was a penalty or two, or maybe it was when the Luna Rossa guys were early in that one start. Their navigation tools said they were on time for one guy's display and said that they were not on time on the other side of the boat. And they got two different people driving and two different people looking at how much time there is till you get to the boundary. They got penalized twice, I think, in one race because their information was incorrect. So that's kind of a sad state that we're that technologically dependent.
Yeah, the perils of relying on the box, and you could hear in the onboard audio, some of the teams are saying just what we're used to on race boats where we do use all that in technical information. It says the box says we have 30 seconds to the ley line, but it looks like it's more than that.
Yeah.
And, good sailors enhance what the box tells them. In the case of the start, the box is telling them not only, it's doing the navigation of here we are and here's what the wind is we're measuring, and therefore, and we know from the race committee, they're providing us where the line is. So therefore we're just doing a speed, time, and distance thing. There's also another X factor, and that's the current. And the current is not measured, obviously, and there's no paddle wheels on the boat, so the boats aren't measuring them. So all the teams are using some sort of current model that's just loaded in. And it's saying, okay, it's 12:53, and therefore the current's 0.3 knots going 37 degrees right here. And that can be wrong. And I do know that on day 3, in fact, a couple teams got their starts wrong, because it looked like, at least to some of the tech people on one of the competing teams, that they didn't have the current right. So that's another X factor. And the sailors should all know that, and they will relearn that very quickly. You got to use your eyes too.
Yeah, really good information. And I think, while you were talking, I was reminded that there was one situation that I thought was really interesting tactically, and it didn't get discussed very much. But Spithill, I think, was racing, I don't know if it was American Magic, but anyway, the Luna Rossa guys got a penalty. And instead of sort of, I'll use my hands as the karate chops, instead of falling down in behind the other boat till they were far enough behind and then tacking away, they just tacked away right away and fell back that way, so that then when they came back together, they were on opposite tacks. And I thought that was really clever, and I bet that was something that they figured out in the simulator.
I wonder if there was a similar situation going out of the weather mark with Team New Zealand and American Magic. Remember when American Magic popped penalty, I don't know when we're lured situation, but as soon as the New Zealanders jibed, by the act of their jibe, it created that separation as well, and that's what sort of immediately cleared the Americans as well. So interesting, yeah. Sort of the maneuvers sort of can wipe it away. One way or the other, as you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole technology of measuring a penalty being performed in a virtual way was first introduced in the World Series prior to the what cup was that? The San Francisco Cup?
2013.
Yeah. And when they were sailing the little boats, and it's all done in Brad Dellenbaugh and Richard Slater's little booth. And they have, back in the olden days, they had VPPs for the boats, and the VPP would say, okay, the boat should be going this, they're going downwind, so therefore here's where their virtual boat would have been, and now they've fallen back that much. It doesn't really seem like they're using the same math quite yet, but it did seem like they were also having technical problems in the umpire booth. But the whole paying off a penalty on a foiling boat, especially when you're trying to get up on the foil or something, is quite interesting. It's a whole new game.
Yeah.
We can. Yeah, go ahead, Garrett. Sorry.
I was going to say, like everybody here, I'm watching from afar in the TV screen, but it seemed like the penalties sure came fast and furious, and you kind of look at it and, well, where was the penalty, and was there really one there? I almost felt like the umpires were jumpy and assessing penalties quickly. But then, having said that, when somebody was penalized, they got out of it really quickly. Unlike we saw, as Pedro points out, in America's Cup World Series in 2012 and 2013, where those penalties were harsh. You did not recover easily in those fleet races from that. But here, they're not quite as harsh. So
yeah, I get right back into it. Sandy, it seemed like there was obviously the day one issues with the foil Kent system and the excellent exchange on stage between Ben and Peter Perling, and that was just a theatrics that I think the whole thing needed started with. So that was a great way. But hopefully, I guess we'll get that sorted. It seemed like day two it was, but I'll be trying to get back to them to find out. It was that sort of a collectively rectified amongst all the teams. I guess we'll find out hopefully eventually. But on the race management side as well, they had some glitches and things like that. So this event did what it was supposed to do, right, and give people a chance to sort of figure out the gremlins on all sides. Yeah.
It seems like they're going to have a regatta in a couple weeks. And the race committee's asking for it so they can smooth out their thing before these races really count, which is probably a good idea. And I'm sure the competitors will welcome another 2 days of racing, particularly the Kiwis, because they don't get too much more racing now.
Well, I watched every minute of it, and I thought it was pretty fascinating. Tortured most of the family through some of it, and their attention span waned. But the 3 hours was a lot of coverage. And I'd say, and does anybody have a favorite race? For me, it was definitely the last day with the Kiwis and the Americans. I think that not being no bias aside, the Patriot is a sexy looking boat when it's going. It got that nice bow down look to it, and looks fast. I'd be confident if I was them, right?
That first race where American Magic beat New Zealand after the quick jibe at the windward mark, those Kiwis were sure coming up on them fast. They were about 500 meters behind on that leg 4. And they charged up and got overlapped at the windward mark. That showed me a lot. Let's not forget that in 2017, New Zealand raced Oracle Team USA twice in Bermuda before the round robins got going. And New Zealand lost to Oracle both times. And then bam, 7-1 in the cup. So I just wonder whether New Zealand's pushing it as hard as they should be. I'm watching their starts down at the left there, and late starts and roaring up every now and then. Nobody else seemed to make up time like they did when they were behind.
Yeah, that one particular race, Gary,
Well,
that one particular race you're talking about, they had some issues before the start with some piece of equipment that they never really disclosed what.
So they said.
Yeah, but you could see that they weren't sailing the way that they would normally sail for a while there, and then all of a sudden everything started ripping along. So it's a little scary if they're just able to kick the spurs in and bring that extra gear. But it was fun to see that most of the boats were pretty close. I think most of us would probably agree that the speed of the equipment certainly changes the approach that you have for close situations. And one of the things that we all love about racing boats in the America's Cup is that it's close, and you just keep the intensity up for 2 hours. These guys have to keep the intensity up for 25 minutes. It's a different game. So it's interesting to see how it's different, and I think that with a little more breeze, we could see some special action.
All right, quick round on who watched in what ways. I'm a big fan of the NBC Sports Gold package. I give it to, and I did take the second day and completely tuned off the commentators. No offense to them, but it was really cool. I think it's cool just to be fully live, in the team's microphones. It's incredible. Worth $175, in my opinion.
Well, Dave, I paid the $174.95, and like you, I found myself listening on board, alternating between the two boats, and then occasionally just checking on with the world feed to get a relationship where they were on the course. But I really enjoyed that, because you hear a lot in these discussions that we all know so well on these boats and short clipped comments. But I took away a lot from that. So I watched it like you.
How about
I have
you,
to
Jordan?
admit, I watched on YouTube after the fact, but I think I will eventually pony up for the gold package. It'll be worth it.
There's nothing like live television,
Yeah.
Who wants to watch a football game the next day?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the NBC Sports Network as part of our cable package in Florida here, and so they had the show on 2 hours later. Basically it started right when live racing was over. So just watched it that way the first 2 nights, but then on the third night, it wasn't there. The third and the fourth night, they didn't. and we recorded the same time period and looked for it everywhere. And, all there was old Dolly Parton reruns and truck shows. And we couldn't figure out what happened to the feed. So, I was able to join the America's Cup 2021 Facebook group. And there was a couple different people within that group that plugged in the New Zealand feed onto their computers, and you could watch it with them basically as a live feature on Facebook.
You see, folks, this is why Ed is an America's Cup champion. He finds that little edge to get that extra. Now, here's some tips for watching. I too watch live. I'm totally hooked. I feel so sorry for those grinders, man. I mean, that is just the worst job in sailing. Give me a break. But what I like to do to get full pleasure out of it is to watch the main feed, the broadcast feed, if you will, and almost always listen to one of the boats on board for the same reasons everybody else does. And then I also have a couple screens set up, and I have Predict Wind set up on one screen, because Predict Wind, John Bilger, who used to work with the Lingy, has set up the buoy network that all the teams use. And so there's a lot more buoys on and around the race course that you can watch and see when they were waiting for the wind, for example, that last day. It was very helpful, and it may prove to be interesting and helpful as we go forward. But I keep an eye on the wind, just like you would if you're racing. And then I also, when it will work, and it wasn't working for me very much, is I really rely, as Gary knows, on the two-dimensional, what you used to call it sail track back in the ESPN days.
Yeah.
But the virtual spectator, because most of the time that broadcast feed and the two video feeds coming from the boats are super zoomed in, and you really don't have much orientation of where you are. And we sailors want to know from a tactical standpoint, or how close are they to the border, et cetera. And also something that's really important that really hasn't been discussed at all is what kind of VMG are they making, or what angle is their track at? Because as we saw in some of those builds, they're going at 90, just like a moth would, to get up on the foil, and then they go back upwind or downwind to generate the most power. And to be able to see the 2D image, actually the virtual spectator image with the wake of the boat turned on, is really, really helpful for tactical sailors.
Yeah, you've got it all. So you've got like 4 or 5 screens going. You got the command center.
We're at the Marine Weather University headquarters here. We've got everything. I have Kenny Reed on speed dial, and Chris Bedford, and some other people that I can't talk about. Juan K.
Very cool. So do you have can you see using the Predict Wind, so-and-so's go to the left side, look like it's gonna be pretty soft over there. Can you see that almost real time?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, the buoys aren't that close together on the course. And also what I didn't do, but I'm going to get the Tide Tech current model and show that, because as I mentioned earlier, the tides in that Waitemata Harbor, and of course we were racing right near the solstice when the tides are the strongest, but it's not, we get well over a knot at times, especially around that north head corner there. As anybody knows, it's been sailed there or towed a boat out, and even past the lighthouse, there's still quite a bit of current. So that's a factor too, and it's a factor not only just in ley lines and stuff, but I think it's a factor in tactics, is where you go. You don't, in a foiling boat, or a boat that VMGs faster than the wind downwind, it's a whole different game with how you play current. And if there is a differential in current flow or a shift in current direction on the course, I think the tacticians will be banking on it, and that'll be going into their heads. It's not just where does it look stronger. There's another element when there's current.
It's amazing. It's amazing that they could see the breeze at that pace with that much going on. To me, it's incredible.
Well, my favorite race was that last one that was abandoned, man. That was just, I was sailboat racing there. I could relate.
Yeah.
That
left the night on the dock, right?
That was actually one of the most enjoyable moments of the 4 days of watching, was that final cross on the boundary, and the banter on the boats was just hysterical. It was like, really, it finally felt like real sailors just having a good time and, you know, taking it one day at a time. Good stuff. All right, so you guys have all been through enough of these cup campaigns. In this downtime between now and January, given that this another pretend regatta happens or not, I don't know, but how do you make best use of this time to get the house in order and get people refocused and ignoring the results of this World Series event?
Well, ignoring the results of the event is a good thing, if, you know, to clear your head. Don't get too excited if you won and too down if you lose, but you got to get these foils and systems going. I mean, that's the whole trick for Ineos, is they got to be able to operate that boat or they're going to be gone quickly. And we'll see the Italians and Americans in the Prada Cup final. But look, you know, Grant Zimmer is pretty good. And let's not forget, they were down, what was it, 8-1 in San Francisco and found a way to win 8 races. And he knows how to do that. And Ben Ainsley was right there with him. I don't know if Jill Scott's got that capability, but those two have seen it before. So we're going to know things very quickly the next time they go sailing, whether they're organized or not. American Magic, don't rest on your laurels. Keep trying to get better. Because Italians are damn close, and Spithill seems to have he got better as the weekend went on.
All right. So how about you, Ed?
Well, you know, all these teams have got a schedule and a plan of things that are coming online, things that are delivering and showing up, new sales, new equipment that was already scheduled, and they just have to keep learning how to use it better than they did before. I think that the fact that they were able to go racing this weekend was so special. It was so important to the campaigns because now they realize that the things they haven't thought about. And they say, oh, well, we got to look at that. Oh, we thought that would be different, you know, and now they're having the meetings talking about, okay, we saw something on another team that we like, or we saw something on our team that we didn't like, and all these things are coming up. And, you know, and if they can use the next 6 weeks or so to really step forward in areas that they hadn't explored or hadn't finished doing the job in, that's going to be how you win the thing. And I think, you know, the bottom line is that, you know, it's still sailboat racing. You still got to start at the favorite end and go to the first shift or puff, and you still got to, you know, go around the downwind gate, upwind, and the upwind gate when you come downwind to you know, shave off distance on the race course. You know, so those things are there, and you got to do those basics. But to use your equipment to the maximum efficiency that's available is the thing that all these teams have got to scramble with right now. None of them have enough time in the boats. None of them have enough time on a race course with other boats. And those things are all popping up as opportunities.
Go for it, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think our other commentators have nailed it pretty well. All the teams have got a full calendar of things that they want to test. And then after this last weekend, I'm sure there's a bunch of things that are added to the list. So the real challenge is trying to, you know, you have too much to test in the available time. So you have to pick what are going to be the most important things to figure out. And some things are going to be left by the wayside.
Excellent. All right, Iso, you get the final word here.
Man, I got nothing left on the table. I just got crumbs. You know, breakfast is done. Dennis Conner taught me when I did my first cup with him. He had a saying that time is the enemy of an America's Cup team, and that whole thought I've remembered, and I've applied it to JJ's Olympic campaigns and stuff. And we've mentioned that before. There's very little time, but the ability to prioritize, and not only just to be able to prioritize what was coming online and what your design team and your tech team had in place, but what you learned from here, that's one of the most fascinating things. And the decisions that are made in the next few days will really determine the future of all these teams. And it's something we may never learn about, but it's a cool human side of sailing. That's the human side. The other side is the America's Cup, as Dennis taught me, is all about boat speed. And it's an overgrown high school science project that's gone crazy. And you got to have fast equipment, and speed is of paramount importance. So all the sailors, and they understand that too. So of course you have to sail well, but ultimately it sure looks like boat speed's going to win this thing. Although there is the X factor that if you just have the bad luck of reaching the boundary right when there's a random hole that your weather team didn't predict and no cloud showed you, you're going to fall off the foil and lose the race in the America's Cup. So that's in there, but it's going to be fun to watch. I'm hooked, but I still feel sorry for the grinders.
Yeah. All right. Well, the grinders get a couple days off. The team guys too for I guess a little Christmas break, and then I imagine December 26th they're probably right back at it, and then so I guess the same for all of us. So thank you guys for an awesome year. I guess we started this thing back in the nuttiness of the pandemic, which still rages on, unfortunately, but it's good to be able to connect here, and it's been a fun year chatting with you guys and keeping up the speed. So I thank you very much for doing this, and more in 2021 with more racing. So I guess we'll bid adieu on the 40-minute mark, and have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and all this stuff.
You too. Nice to talk to all you guys. Thank you.
You guys, happy holidays.
Stay healthy.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye, everyone. Thanks
Bye.
also to all the Sailing World viewers who have put up with us over the course of this year.
And Mele Kalikimaka. Thanks, Dave. Great job.
Amen. All right. We'll see you guys next year.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.